Combat is one of the most important skills in Hypixel Skyblock, which is why finding efficient ways to level it is very important. In this video, I will be going over the techniques and gear you should use to grind ghosts, which is one of the most efficient combat XP methods in the entire game. At peak efficiency, ghost grinding can not only make 1.7 million combat XP per hour, but also can net you upwards of 25 million coins per hour. So, if you're interested in learning about the techniques that can allow you to kill upwards of 100 ghosts per minute, I recommend that you stick around until the end. I have to preface this video with an important note, which is that ghosts are extremely RNG dependent, with all of their drops being in the ballpark of 1 in 1,000. This means for any test to be accurate at assessing the profitability of ghost grinding, it would have to be extraordinarily long, and I'm extremely lazy. That is why this video will be using the power of math to unquestionably prove that this combat and money-making method is extremely profitable. I'm going to avoid as much as possible having math on screen because it's really boring, but the basics are this. Ghosts have a total of 4 different drops with 4 different drop rates. Each of these drops sells for a certain amount of money, meaning that if you multiply the profit per drop times the average drop rate of that item, you get the expected value per ghost kill. From there, you can take that and apply your magic find to find the total amount of money you should expect per kill from drops alone. Add on to that the fact that 1 in 10,000 ghosts drops a million coins on kill unaffected by magic find, and you have a brand new number. Finally, you can take that number and add on the number of coins you receive per kill, and you have the total amount of coins you will get on average per ghost you kill. Take that number and multiply it by the total number of ghosts you can kill per hour, and you have your average hourly profitability. My numbers work out to a little over 15.5 million coins per hour, which is already good for a money-making method, and that is excluding the fact that you get insane amounts of combat XP from this. At peak efficiency, I was comfortably getting between 1.7 and 1.8 million combat XP per hour, but the question is, how do you actually achieve this? To explain that, I'll be showing you a couple of different setups along with telling you their pros and cons and what my personal favorite is. Ghosts are a pretty unique mob. They have 1 million health and once per second deal 1000 damage and 100 true damage to all players within 4 blocks of them. They are entirely immune to magic damage and bows, meaning that you have to damage them using melee weapons or fishing rods. The base requirement for doing ghosts is really just to survive. If you're using a setup that doesn't have sufficient tankiness, then you really won't be able to do ghosts no matter how hard you try. The next important consideration when you're attempting to grind ghosts is your healing. Even if you are plenty tanky, you still take tons of damage, meaning that if you don't have the right healing items and enchants, you won't survive no matter what. There are a number of items that can help with healing, with the main ones being the Overflux Power Orb, the Zombie Florid Sword, and the Wand of Atonement, along with the Rejuvenate enchants and Zombie Slayer 8. While none of these items are strictly necessary by themselves, you need at least some combination of all of them to be able to survive through the pretty heavy damage you'll be taking. The next question is gear. Of course, the first question is your armor, and in my opinion, you really shouldn't be attempting ghosts unless you have at least 3/4 Necron with a Tarantula helmet and preferably a Warden helmet. Of course, while my Necron armor is nearly entirely maxed out and my Warden helmet is entirely maxed out, you really don't have to go this far. All you need is Necron and a Warden helmet and you're pretty much set. If you opt to go for a Tarantula helmet, your setup works out to around 100 mil, but if you instead decide to go for the Warden helmet, it's closer to something like 400 mil. For your weapons, you need a combination of 2 items, the first one being a Soul Whip and the second being either an Emerald Blade or a Giant Sword. With those 2 weapons laid out, you need to choose from one of 3 different damage options, which are a regular enchant Soul Whip, a one-for-all Soul Whip, and sword swapping to a one-for-all Emerald Blade. The main thing to note about damage requirements for using a setup like this is that all you need to be able to do is one-tap ghosts using the left click of the Emerald Blade. This doesn't technically have to be an Emerald Blade either, as right now I'm only using an 80 mil Emerald Blade with a Mithril Golem. If I were to use something like an Ender Dragon, and even something like a one-for-all Reaper Scythe, scythe, you could still probably one-tap ghosts. The first way is mainly relying on the regular enchanted soul whip. The pros of this are mostly that you can have siphon or lifesteal and you can get a scavenger. Having these two combined means that you can heal up a lot easier compared to the other methods, and you make a more consistent amount of money just from ghost kills alone. When you are farming with this method, it's most important to just continually circle around the outside of the ghosts, trying to constantly be damaging as many as you possibly can. The biggest upsides to this are that it is relatively cheaper compared to One For All if you go for lower level enchants. It's a little bit simpler, and it's better when you don't have as high of EHP because the extra healing makes it easier to last through, and of course it's kind of just the simplest. However, the downsides arise when you start comparing it to the other methods, the next of which is using a One For All Soul Whip. When you choose to use the One For All Soul Whip, you sacrifice all the healing and extra coins that you get from the regular enchant Soul Whip. However, in return, you get about 2 times as much damage. However, this setup is still the most limited in terms of its damage options, because in order to be able to 2-tap the ghosts with the Soul Whip, you have to almost entirely be using maxed gear. This last setup works around that by, instead of dealing damage with the Soul Whip itself, it is rather just used to channel the damage of the Emerald Blade. The weird quirk about the Soul Whip that makes this work is that if you throw out a Soul Whip arc and then you swap to a different weapon mid-air, it actually deals the damage of the weapon that you're holding. This means that if you throw out a Soul Whip arc and then switch to an Emerald Blade, you can pretty easily one-tap ghosts. This last setup almost entirely relies on that, and interestingly, it doesn't really even matter the enchants of the Soul Whip for this setup. The biggest downside of using this setup is that it is slightly more expensive and it is a lot more mental effort. However, the upsides are that it is vastly more efficient than either of the other two methods. With this kind of setup, you can use a number of different pets, with the easiest arguably being the Ender Dragon. Of course, it is the most expensive, but it means that you'll be dealing the most damage and have the highest EHP. If you want a cheaper version of the Ender Dragon, you can always go for something like the Mithril Golem. The Mithril Golem is also a very efficient pet for grinding out ghosts because it gives you a ton of true defense and all those combat stats inside the Dwarven Mines. Finally, if you want to maximize money, you can go for something like a Black Cat. Using a Black Cat will vastly increase the number of drops you get from ghosts, meaning that it is much more profitable, and if instead you want to max out for combat XP, you can switch to something like a Wolf. All 4 of these setups can effectively one-tap ghosts using an Emerald Blade, however they do require different amounts of coins on said Emerald Blade. However, as far as I know, a giant sword will be able to accomplish all of it. So now, how does this work out the values that I told you earlier? First of all, if you are efficient at killing ghosts using an Emerald Blade and a Soul Whip, you can normally kill around 100 per minute, working out to 6,000 per hour. Combine this with the fact that I get around 199 magic find against ghosts when I'm on a maxed out combo, and that takes you to the total of what I got earlier. Actually being able to get to the 6,000 ghost per hour mark does take a little bit of practice, however there is one item that can make it a lot easier, and that is the Gyro Kinetic Wand. Using the Gyro Kinetic Wand left-click ability allows you to group all the ghosts in a large area into one tiny space, which you can then one-tap all at once using the Soul Whip. To truly be most efficient for getting money while grinding ghosts, I also recommend that you XP share a combat pet while you're grinding. This will of course allow you to get more money from the combat XP that you put onto the pet, and at current prices you normally get around 3 coins per XP if you're doing something like an Ender Dragon, meaning that the extra amount of money you get will be pretty sizable. Now of course the moment you've all been waiting for is comparing these methods to see which one is the best. The worst of these methods, which also of course happens to be the cheapest and easiest, is using the enchanted Soul Whip. This will only gain you around 13 million coins per hour, not including pet XP, which is still pretty good. Next best is using the One For All Soul Whip, not very surprising here either, and that will get you around 14 million coins per hour. Of course, it's also important to note that these numbers are specific to me because you gain increased amount of magic find against ghosts as your bestiary increases. Finally, of course, the most effective method also happens to be the most difficult to learn, and that is the sword swapping method that involves the Soul Whip and the Emerald Blade. This will make you around 16 to 16.5 million coins per hour, or at least it did for me, and that's because it allows you to use the Black Cat for the increased magic find, and you can just be more efficient with the number of ghosts you kill. Of course, if you're just optimizing for combat XP, I recommend that you use a wolf, and using a wolf with the One for All Emerald Blade, you will be able to get around 1.7 to 1.8 million combat XP per hour. Now, the final question you probably have is, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that you could make up to 25 million coins per hour, but how do you get that? And that of course is possible by using the Bestiary. The Bestiary is a system that gives you more coins, magic find, and strength against mobs when you have killed more of them. And of course, I've killed 286,000, but the number one ghost killer has killed around 3 million. This means that instead of getting my measly 199 magic find against ghosts, if you're one of the top ghost grinders, you can be getting in the range of 350 to 360 magic find against ghosts. In my opinion, a lot of that is what makes ghost grinding so interesting, which is that it actually makes you better over time as you grind up the Bestiary, which isn't true for very many mobs. You can abuse this a lot with ghosts, and it can make a ton of money over time. Before we go, I want to give you a few final notes of things that you can do to increase your ghost grinding efficiency, and the first thing is using a pet known as the Grandma Wolf. The Grandma Wolf is extremely powerful for ghost grinding, as ghosts are one of the few mobs that you can maintain consistently high combos on without having to worry about losing them. And with a max combo, you get an increase of 9% magic find, 20 coins per kill, and 15% more combat XP. If you plan on grinding ghosts and you don't have a level 100 Grandma Wolf, I strongly recommend that you either XP share or main your Grandma Wolf for as long as you can, because a level 100 Grandma Wolf is extremely powerful. With a little bit of practice, you can get to the point where you can consistently keep combos almost infinitely, and I've had multiple times where I've been able to get upwards of 2,000 or 3,000 kill combos. The other thing I want to mention is about lobbies. Lobbies are one of the most critical part of having a good ghost grinding experience, and if you can't find a solo lobby, sometimes you have to create one. I also want to recommend that if you're in a lobby with somebody with significantly better gear or who is dealing significantly more damage, it's normally not a good idea to try to compete with them, because most of the time you're just wasting your time. And with that, that just about wraps it up for this video. If you're interested in any of the math I used in this video, I will be linking all of the scripts I made for it in the description below. Also, you can join my Discord server where I will have a couple of custom bot commands where you can check your estimated ghost profits based on some very basic numbers. These won't be 100% accurate, but they will give you a decent guess at how much you should be making. Also, I do very much know that I haven't uploaded a video in quite a while, and most of that is just due to me being lazy and busy with schoolwork, so I appreciate all of you for sticking around and supporting me through that. With that said, I will see you guys later, and adios.